Between aging and busy lifestyles, many women struggle with maintaining their physical and mental wellness. At Aquavita Concierge Healthcare Services for Women, we can help you revitalize your health and reclaim your life. We start from within by balancing your hormones, allowing your body to achieve and maintain desired weight goals. We also specialize in peptide therapies, regenerative medicine, sexual health, and aesthetics in our state-of-the-art facilities. Feel better, look better, live better at Aquavita. Visit aquavitality.com and begin your journey today.
This episode is brought to you by Let's Productions. Follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn. See you there.
Willie, on the other hand, made it to the farmhouse and then returned to the login within a quarter of an hour, only to find that Tommy wasn't there. Willie, the grandfather, and William immediately began searching the area for him. Around 20 minutes after the initial search, they were joined by the soldiers from the camp. Midnight came around and the search was halted.
Capabilities like a helicopter, but can also reverse direction instantly, unlike any known aircraft. It also shows no ramping up speed when moving from a standstill, and based on its position relative to the mountain, the team calculates its drop speed at the end at just over Mach 1.
Every year, hundreds of people are reported missing in national parks and forests, many of them children. And most are eventually found, whether dead or alive. But a small percentage of the cases, some right here in Oregon, are never solved. The mystery those cases present has one man wondering if there's a common denominator behind the disappearances that have search and rescue crews continuing to scratch their heads.
What's up, everyone? This is Arizona Gallegos, and you're listening to Alien Strand Podcast with Donald Ledesma. Check out my Facebook page at Arizona Secret Backyard. Hit me a like, share, and follow. I'll see you there.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Alien Strand Podcast. I'm your host, Donald Ledesma, and welcome to another live show. Yeah, this is number 2 now that we've been going live. We're trying something new to try to get you guys a little bit more involved with the show, right? You know, you can find us on Alien Strand there on Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and alienstrand.com. You can check us out there if you're looking for us. Send us some messages, instant messenger if you got some videos or you have some stories to tell. You know, you can call me at any time and I'll be happy to talk to you about anything you want to talk about, a sighting, an encounter, or even an abduction. You know, you can give me a call, and then if you want to get on the show, we can get you on the show, right? So you can just click that button there on Facebook. You'll see it says call now. Just click that and it'll dial my number, which is 361-245-8000. Again, that's 361-245-8000. And, I just want to welcome everybody to the show, and it's growing and growing, and, we're, all over the place now. China, we're in Japan, I believe, Australia, United Kingdom. People are just listening to us from all over, Canada right now, even in the local states, they're just everywhere. They're just tuning in, listening to the show, and just kind of getting the feel of what's going on, right? So today's show is a little, it's a little different. I always talk about, things that people go through as far as like, alien abductions or encounters, and when they come back, or they're able to tell these stories. But what about the people that don't come back, right? What about them? And that always has me a little more intrigued on what's going on out there, right? What's happening to them? Where did they go? But before I get into that subject, real quick, I had this gentleman call me the other night, and he was explaining to me, about extraterrestrials and aliens, and what I thought, how everybody would react if a UFO or extraterrestrial craft landed, right? He's like, how would you think people would react, right? Well, would they go crazy? Would they go nuts? Would they just like, be in awe, and, and I told him, I said, look, you just got to sit back and enjoy the ride, man. I said, they've been coming here for hundreds of years, thousands of years, possibly, and if they want to make contact, they will. And I'm sure they've made contact with a lot of people, plus a lot of government agencies as well. This is what I believe. Now we're starting to see them, these crafts, all over the skies. People are actually videotaping them, right? And it's just so many that we're seeing per day. Why is that? Why are they making themselves known so much, right? So he was a little concerned about it, as anybody else should be. And we had a nice conversation, and I enjoyed that conversation with him. So just like him, and any of you guys ever have any questions like that, feel free to call me, and I'll be happy to talk to you and explain things to you, in a sense to where, maybe you wanted to hear it in a different way, and the way I think should be the way, as far as like getting your point across to a subject like this, because it's very controversial, right? Aliens, UFOs, back in the 20, 30 years ago, people used to think you were crazy when you talked about stuff like that, right? But not anymore, because there's just so much of it, and there's just so many stories out there. And that's why a lot of my podcasts, I get a story out, right? And a lot of old stories, because they're very well documented. And it interests me because of the details on their stories. Same as I'm doing here today. And I decided to talk about this subject because it's been on my mind for a while, and I just thought that, you guys should know about it. As if you didn't already know sometimes. But I'm going to get into detail. This is called The Missing, number 58. And the reason I brought this up, because there's just so many people go missing all the time. In a lot of forestry areas, a lot of national parks here in the United States. In a lot of mountainous terrains, even in other countries. A lot of people go missing and they're never seen again. Or if they're found hundreds of miles away sometimes 50 miles from where they were. How did they get from there to there within a short amount of time? Sadly, a lot of these people that they do find later are deceased because of the extreme weather that happens every time somebody goes missing. And there's a lot of points to what happens to people and how these things happen. It's like a puzzle that people have put together. And there's always, when somebody goes missing, it's a point of separation, right? Because they're always by themselves, in a sense. They always separate. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to go hunting in this direction. You go that direction. A few hours later, they never show up. Usually the time of a lot of these disappearances are usually in the late afternoon, right? Because it's always gets nighttime. People have a hard time finding people, especially a lot of these forest areas. There's always like mountainous boulder fields in the area where a lot of these things occur. They've put together that a lot of these things happen when you're near water, right? A lot of these people as well, when they do get abducted or they separate or they go missing, a lot of them have some sort of disability. It could be a leg, an arm, or it's something. You could be deaf or blind in one eye. A lot of times that when they send search parties out for you or for whoever's missing, canines seem to lose sense quickly. And sometimes when they do find a deceased person, they've already searched that area before. And they combed it like a fine-tooth comb, right? But they still end up finding this person. They say, wait a minute, I already went through that area. How is that happening? A lot of times they're missing clothing as well. There's always an unknown cause of death. So there's a lot of people that actually go missing in Nome, Alaska. They have the most UFO sightings than anywhere else in Nome, Alaska. It's about 22 square miles of land on the coast of the Bering Sea. And it's a perfect place for, a UFO. Why? Because there's minimal life there. Populations are low. The winters could be extreme there as well. They're usually extreme between November and March. They usually hit below zero in Nome, Alaska. And that in that little town, it's about a population of about 4,000 people. And it's a big tourist attraction as well. People do go there, visit. People have disappeared there from 1960 through 2004, and even today. So in that terrain, in that area, there's about 350 miles of roads, which is a perfect place for a UFO abduction, right? They even, if you can remember, they made a movie there called The Fourth Kind. That was in 2009. And when they did this movie, they dramatized it, right, towards more alien abductions, UFOs, right? A lot of people thought that those scenes in that movie were real. They looked real. But they weren't. It's like people were saying, well, it's misleading a little bit, right? But this is what the directors and, the script writers did on that movie, The Fourth Kind. Was it misleading? I don't know. A lot of times the FBI, when they go searching for somebody out there that goes missing, they usually cancel it within a short period of time. They say because of a lot of people possibly have extensive alcohol in their system. They get lost. There's harsh winters out there, remember. Recently, a 33-year-old Alaskan native mother went missing on August 30th after leaving her tent. The strange thing about that one was that her shoes and her jacket were left behind. In Nome, Alaska, think about that just for a second. Her name was Florence Okpaluk. Did she see something that night to climb out of her tent and disappear? They never found her body. Still haven't found her. They used dogs, cadaver dogs, and they still had no success. This is still an active investigation in that area. They've always talk about, how we have a Bermuda Triangle down here. Well, they say there's an Alaskan Triangle in that area as well. So in 1950, a military aircraft with 44 people on board disappeared without a trace. 44 people disappeared without a trace in that area. Also, a Cessna vanished in 1990 with a pilot and 4 passengers. That also disappeared without a trace. Since 1988, over 16,000 people have vanished in the Alaskan Triangle. 16,000. It's 1988. And that averages to about 4 missing people to every 1,000. That's twice the national average, right? So that's a lot of people if you really think about that. That's a lot of people that go missing in that area. The Alaskan natives in that area, they do have a mythical creature that they call the Kushtaka. And that means land otter man. Or maybe what we can interpret as a Bigfoot. And their folklore says that it manifests itself into a child or relative to lure you into your demise. This is Alaskan folklore.
Lean on us.
We are here for you.
You matter.
You are not alone.
Are you feeling overwhelmed? Not sure where to turn? The National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is there for you 24/7. Call or text 988 or chat at 988sc.org. Whether you're having an emergency or you know someone who needs support now, they can help you take the next step towards finding hope and healing.
There is hope. 988sc.org.
So we have a story here. A gentleman by the name of Rick Hills. This happened February 24th, 2004. From Sedona. He was home from an oil field job there in Alaska. That day, he got in his red Dodge truck and headed to Anchorage, Alaska, which was about 150 miles away, to get his paycheck. They say that day he reached Anchorage, picked up his paycheck, and headed back that day. But he never returned. So 2 days later, they found his truck, which was plowed into a snowbank. And mind you, this was 15 miles before he got home. His keys were in the ignition. And he did have $250 in the console. This is key. So they ended up finding his tracks in the snow. And they said he had a foot that was dragging. So apparently he got hurt in that incident. And it led into the woods. About a quarter mile in, he came up to a house. And it was the back of the house. So he ended up there on the back porch. This is where the trail leads to. Maybe to find help. But nobody was home. Then he wandered into an abandoned airstrip where his footprints ended. The search dogs lost his scent at that area, right where his footprints ended. They said it was like if Rick had got plucked from the snow and lifted straight into the air. Does this happen to people when they go missing in the woods as well? I believe it does. How does his tracks just end at the end of that airstrip? No more tracks. No nothing. He was a happily married man, 3 children at home, girls. They ruled out suicide and anything like that. There was just no way, they said. There was no way he could disappear like that. My thing is, where his footprints ended, they said it was like something pulled him up in the sky. They never found him again. He was 35 years of age. But these stories can get even stranger at times. So on February 1977, a 24-year-old Stephen Kubacki, he went cross-country skiing through the snow near Lake Michigan here in the States. He reached the end of the lake, took his skis off to rest, and sat down. He was exhausted. When he got up to leave, his own tracks were gone and he became lost. The last thing he remembers is walking through the snow, feeling exhausted and numb and blacked out. But in the blink of an eye, it was springtime. He says, I was laying in a grassy field in the middle of the forest, wearing clothes that weren't his. Next to him was a stranger's backpack, containing running shoes, glasses that weren't his either. So he hiked to the nearest town and asked the residents where he was. They told him, "You're in Pittsfield, Massachusetts." He was like, "What?" He was 700 miles from where he was skiing. So when they told him the area he was at, he remembered his aunt and his father lived in Pittsfield. He went to their home, knocked on the door. When they opened the door, his family was in shock when they opened the door. They started hugging him, asking him where he had been. They told him, "You have been missing for 14 months. When he first went missing, the search teams found his poles, his skis, near by the lake. And footprints leading towards the water. So at that point, they assumed that he had drowned in the frozen lake. So they stopped search. You know, 1 minute you're skiing, you take your skis off to take a break because you're tired. Next minute you get up, your tracks are gone, blacks out, opens his eyes, and it's springtime. 14 months later. How does that happen? Me personally, I believe he was abducted and brought back later. He still does not remember a thing. I believe they tried even to do hypnotherapy on him. He can't remember anything. He's blacked out. You know, you figure, even if he was trying to make it up or anything, the area where he was at, people would have saw him. But nobody did. How does that happen? That's what's so bizarre and strange about this story. You know, he actually made it back.
Are you struggling to conceive? You have options, and at Piedmont Reproductive Endocrinology Group, we'll make sure you have the guidance and support you need. PREG is known for individualized fertility care that's unique to every patient. We take the time to provide a reassuring and empowering experience because we believe that you deserve nothing less. Let us help you on your journey to parenthood. Visit us at pregonline.com to learn more. Get the guidance and support you need at Piedmont Reproductive Endocrinology Group.
You know, what happens to the missing that never return? And why did Stephen survive his ordeal and other people haven't? He has missing time. A lot of missing time. Usually in a lot of my stories that I tell, they have short periods of missing time. 2 hours, 3 hours. You know. The only one that I thought had a longer period of abduction time was Travis Walton from the movie Fire in the Sky, even from the book. I believe he was gone for 5 to 7 days. But this guy was gone 14 months. You know, why do you get amnesia when you're around extraterrestrials? Why is it that they do that to you? It's just something to think about. I mean, do you believe that a lot of these folks that go missing and don't come back, do you believe they were abducted? Now, granted, I understand that people go missing and they end up finding them 5-10 years later or whatever. Their bones, they do the DNA and, they extract it and they find some people that way. Yes, it does happen that way. But when somebody goes missing without a trace, without nothing, no bones, no nothing, no backpack, it's just bizarre. How does that happen? You hear stories about these hunters with these rifles or these bows. They're out in the middle of nowhere. I believe there was a story in New Mexico. The guy had a bow. He was less than a mile from his truck with a group of guys. They all went their own way. He had his sidearm with him as well, backpack. He was limping on one leg because, he was hurt from a prior accident. When they got back to finish their hunt, reunite after they were done, he never showed up. They never found his bow. They never found his pistol. They never found his boots. They never found his backpack. They never found nothing. This was in New Mexico. How is it that happens? If you watch the story, the documentary called Missing 411, check that out. I believe it's on Tubi TV. There's a story in there kind of bizarre. And it happened to a gentleman out there, and, he was out there in Montana, He disappears with his friends, after a while. What's so crazy about it is they go back and they're searching for months for him, even years. They find his boots, they find things, but they don't find him anywhere. And they found a backpack several years later, and they found his sidearm with the backpack. So you think if it's foul play or anything like that, you're not going to find anything like that. Nothing, no evidence. But these things were found. I believe they did find a skull later. But they were wondering, how is it that these places that this backpack was, there was a canteen with a thermos with coffee on a rock close by somebody's house that was his. That wasn't there before, and it was sitting there before they find these things. His shoes were stacked up in a nice little pile, nice and neat. They were together. When you do get hypothermia, your body ends up, you're cold, yes, but you get hot. So you start taking your clothes off. This is what happens to people when they freeze to death, right? It happens that way sometimes. They don't feel anything. I have heard of a story of, an actual people that have gone out into the woods and have sort of communicated with Bigfoot or Sasquatch out there. They see rocks in a little pile. Sticks in a small pile. They're moved around. There was a gentleman that was out there actually. He saw one face to face. Good distance. He said probably about 20 yards from me, 30 yards. But we were both standing in a roadway looking at each other. And he goes, and I put a rock on top of another one in the middle of that road. And he saw me do it. He says, I can't explain exactly what that thing was, but it wasn't a human being. So later, he returns to that spot because that's his hunting ground for 40 years. He goes back to that same spot where he put the rock down, and he finds something different on top of that rock. So there's some kind of communication with this Bigfoot, right? And I was just thinking, when they find these people's clothes, are they nice and neat or stacked up like in a little pile like this? That people that go missing. Could it be Bigfoot related? Could it be extraterrestrials? I think it's a little of both. Small percentage, I'm thinking, the people that go missing, by accident, they fall over a cliff, they hit the water, I understand that. They'll find their body probably 5-10 miles down the road, or maybe less than that. Even children go missing, and they find their bodies 50 miles away. They figure if they would have got ravaged by an animal or something, their stuff would have been scattered everywhere, but they're not. A lot of times, these children that are found, they still have all their clothes on. I believe there was only one story that's out there that this child, he was like 1 or 2 years old, maybe a little older. He disappeared for about 2 or 3 days, and they ended up finding him alive. They thought he was dead. He was in the snow, laying there, stiff as a board. He was starting to freeze up. But they found him, and they brought him back. And he's alive today. He's a grown man. He doesn't remember that account, because he was just a small child when it happened, right? It'd be nice to know or remember these things. But, like I said, me personally, I believe they're extraterrestrial related, most of these stories. A lot of people claim to see bright lights before this thing happens. They even see the bright lights sometimes, or UFOs, even before a Bigfoot encounter. Are both of these entities somehow connected with each other, in a sense? That gentleman asked me, that I was on the phone with, he asked me, hey, what do you think about the owls? Why is it that we see the owls all the time? And I sat there and I thought about it just for a second. I was, a lot of times, a lot of people do see these owls before they see an extraterrestrial. Could it be that these owls have like a high intuitiveness, like a cat with a spirit, or a dog with a spirit, right? Or with energy, things that we can't see in a different spectrum, but they're more in tune to it. Is this possible? Maybe these things are connected. A lot of people have a friend of mine there in Canada, Quebec. She sends me pictures at times, and I believe she sent me a picture of an owl as well. How is it that these things are connected, right? And I always tell people, kind of be careful. Don't go out there too much, People do go missing, right? And I don't want it to be one of you. So what are your thoughts about missing people? Why they don't come back? And why they're just a lucky few? There's probably more abductions than we actually even know about, because we can only hear the stories of the people that have come back. I'm sure the percentage of the people that haven't come back is much greater than the people that did come back. Just think about that just for a second. I've always wondered about these things. And the heartfelt relatives of these people that go missing, it's just devastating. I read a story yesterday, as a matter of fact. This woman, same thing in Alaska. Her brother went missing about 10 miles from where this story I just told you about this gentleman that his footprints ended at the end of an abandoned airport, right? But her brother went missing as well. They checked all around his house, within 5 to 10 miles in the area, could never find him. The guy had lost his job. They said he only had $10 in his bank account. So they weren't thinking too much foul play, like somebody robbed him, tried to, took him out to the woods and murdered him. But no, nothing was ever found, right? So about 10 years later, maybe about 100 yards from his house, somebody finds a body sitting there by a tree. It's already in skeletal remain. The clothes were still on this person. It was a Levi's jacket. So automatically she thought that was her brother. And they got the police out there and wanted to get closure, right? So they sent the bones in to a lab in the States. A few weeks later, they got the news. Yes, this is your brother. Case closed, right? They were ready to close the case. It had already been 10 years. They had been hurting all these years, wondering where he was at. But then, they even had a funeral for him. Ashes in an urn. They buried him. Had services for him. Then a few weeks later after that, the university calls him and sends him a message back. Sorry to tell you, but it's our mistake. That was not your brother. So naturally, they're devastated, right? Totally devastated, as anyone else would be, knowing their brother is missing for all that time. They were so angry they screamed and they couldn't figure out why. But the bones that they did have, or the ones that they did bury, they did find an identity for that person. So they were nice enough to call that person's family and tell them, look, we buried your son. It was an accident. It was a mistake. We have his ashes. They had to re-dig it back out. Just the ashes. And they went all the way to Arizona to take these ashes to these people because they knew that they were devastated as well. So these are the things that people go through that you don't hear. These are the stories that you don't hear of people that go missing. Happens every day, every single day in these forestry areas. You could be elderly, women, children. You could have all the skills in the world to be a lot of these hunters that go missing. They've been hunting 40 years, 30 years. They have all this experience behind their back of their rifles and their guns, and they don't find nothing. How does that happen? So I'm here to echo their voices for you because we don't know what happened to them. And a lot of times we need to stop and just think just for a minute for those families that have been devastated by their loss and their missing loved one. People will continue on searching for the rest of their lives until they get some kind of closure. Can we say extraterrestrials and Bigfoot encounters where they go missing is closure? No, we can't say that because we don't know that for sure. But we're trying to put 2 and 2 together to get the proper answer that we need, right? What else could it be? Could it be this Alaskan folklore Bigfoot that they have out there as well? The Otter Man. You know, they speak about it for a reason. Because probably somebody has seen something like that. Way back a long time ago, you know, when we couldn't explain things very well. Or maybe the natives lived there and they called him the Otter Man, right? It sounds like a strange creature. But that's part of their folklore, right? So, we have to think about, what do you think happened to these people? Were they abducted by extraterrestrials? Taken away? Never to be seen again? Or did something else happen to them? But as always, it's up to you to decide, right? So today has been a very interesting podcast. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I love doing this. Hope everybody stayed safe. Hope you had a very nice and lovely new year. You know, 2021 is going to be a better year. Alien Strand has a lot more stories to come up with, to tell you a lot of more stories. And there's plenty out there. But as always, keep your eyes in the sky, keep your camera ready, keep that autofocus on. And please, if you're going to catch a UFO, roll down your window, please. We're always seeing the smears through the glass in the mirror, and then people say, hey, we can see the reflection, it's the light from the inside of the car. You know, stop, pull over, be safe. If you see something in the sky, take out your phone, make sure your stabilizer's on your phone so we can get some nice footage, all right? It was my pleasure. Until then, you guys have yourselves a good day. Have yourselves a good evening. Have yourselves a good night.
This is Kelly Green with Realty Executives, Coastal Bend and Corpus Christi, Texas. And you're listening to the Alien Strand podcast with Donald Ledesma. Buying or selling, visit me at kellygreenrealtor.com or visit me on my Facebook page, Kelly Green Realtor. See you there.
Did you miss your deadline to renew your Medicaid coverage? You can still send your completed annual review form to Healthy Connections Medicaid. You may be assigned to another health plan, but you can ask to come back to First Choice within 60 days of renewed Medicaid eligibility. It's your family. It's your choice. First Choice is the right choice. Renew and choose us. Visit selecthealthofsc.com/renew to learn more.